All right, everybody, away we go. There we go. I am live, I believe. It is Wednesday, February 19th of 2025. And this is the Profitable Real Estate Agent Plan. And I want to just give you a little bit of a review while we let people kind of stroll in here, where we've been, where we're going, and why this is so important to you and to me and to everybody who listens to this. Let me just start off by saying, when I sent out the email blast tonight to any of those people that come in and are invited from the public, this is what we do every day. So we're not guessing. There's no theory here. This is actually the wireframe for what actually works in the field. I have been executing this plan for quite some time, and it has been profitable, to say the least. And it seems to keep getting better each year, or at least a couple of deals just are extraordinarily profitable. And it's amazing when you have a good plan that you can execute and manage how well you can do. And that's for anybody who's brand new to the business or been around it a long time, because I have experience with both. We hire people that are brand new all the time, from Seattle to Boston to wherever we might be. And then all of my coaching clients are top producers who need to be more organized and who need to manage. Interesting coaching one-on-one today with a super mega producer in Montreal, talking about the same thing that I was talking to a young guy that works for him. It's amazing how when you have a good universal plan, it applies to somebody wherever they are in their career. But to put it all in perspective, in case you're just jumping on the bandwagon tonight, just to refresh, the first week we talk about bulletproofing your self-image. And there's some very real how-to techniques in doing that. So again, oftentimes I talk about what to do and how to do it. Really what to do is a major structural, strategic approach to life in business, and in this business in particular. And then sometimes I'll dabble down into how we do it. So understand the main thing I want you to take away from these calls is what to do. And so if you're with me in some capacity in one of our coaching programs or brokerage, then you're going to know how we teach you to do it. But if you're not, understand this is the framework for anybody, okay? So you have to develop a self-image as a profitable agent, no matter where you're at in your career. And there are real techniques. We talk about that in week one. The best recommendation that I can give you is to listen to or read new, let's just go with Psycho Cybernetics. I was going to pull it up here too at some point in time, because I noticed I am giving a lot of advice on books, and I want to make sure that I give those book recommendations. So before I forget to do that, I'll try to pull it up here and we'll go from there. But anyway, I want you to see yourself as being profitable. Two, when you're running a business, which this is not a job, this is a business, you have to start quantitatively understanding how you're doing. And that starts with your top line, your gross commission income before your splits, what that goal is. And without a North Star goal, meaning that financial top line that you're after, you're nowhere. You have to always be seeing that, because then it puts everything else that we teach in perspective. Is, oh, that's how I get there, right? So that was week two. Week three, it's interesting. Just this morning with somebody who's got a lot of vigor and a lot of excitement for the business, and was sort of talking over me. I had a pattern interrupt. I said, stop. I bet you're not going to be able to tell me why I should do business with you, or what's the benefit of doing business with you. And he said, well, we give you a unique experience. I said, that's called a wandering generality. Whereas I can tell you, you should do business with me because I have a plan. It's 7 steps. It's easy to understand. And I'll show you exactly what to do. And if you want to choose me, how to do it. Boom. It's not even the same kind of conversation, because we understand what that unique selling proposition means and how important it is to have a specific answer. We covered that in week 3. But just because you can answer that doesn't mean everybody is ideal, or / the word avatar in a marketing concept. We talk about defining from a very simplistic form what an ideal person contact is as they move from lead to prospect, to client, to closing, to past client, right? They have to move along all these modules, and you want them to be the best that they can be. And there are parameters for that, right? And then, of course, finally, I say, of course, because all you want to talk about is leads, leads, leads. Where am I going to get the leads? Well, they're hiding in plain sight. And especially if you're considering seller leads, they're definitely hiding in plain sight. And the ones that can make you very profitable are right there in front of you. They don't cost you anything. If you're a member of the MLS, you can find them. And there are others, right? And then we get into a lot of the ways to easily find buyers once you're in that game. So we talk about leads, but we take the pressure off of lead generation by explaining where everything really is right in front of you, and that there are more than enough leads. There's never, ever a shortage. And then we talk about how to take that unique selling proposition information and really have you understand that that is really your core content. So that when you're going to get your name out there per se, or you're going to be out in the wild world of real estate, you need to know how to put that content forward in an organized way so that people see you as professional. So whether they see you first that way, or they've met you and they want to vet you, right? Meet, then vet, right? That's the order of things typically. We show you how to have that organized out there on content platforms in a simplistic way. You don't have to be the next TikToker, YouTuber trying to do things, off the top of your head. When you have a systematic approach, it's so dang easy. Then once that is all kicking into place and you begin to talk to people, you need structure. We talk about the power of using psychology in the structure of scripts. And scripts can be telemarketing scripts. Scripts can be the way that you give presentations. But it's very, very important to understand that you cannot wing it when you are trying to tell somebody about the offer of your new unique selling proposition. It needs to be tight. It needs to be organized. It needs to be rooted in the laws of psychology, because if you're going to influence people to do business with you, you have to know how to do it properly. That's week 7, probably one of the most significant changes in my business over the last 6 years. And then as we getting into that act of turning a lead, meaning you don't know why and you don't know how motivated they are, into a prospect where you know that, how do we really create them and then protect them? Because that's what really gives your business longevity. 8 becomes a very pivotal week in this course, because it is upon prospects that you will build a predictable and consistent flow of business. So if you don't know how to properly create them and properly how to protect them, then you can't steadily even out where you get your business from. And then you're just like a junkie, in an alley trying to get high off of the next person that'll give you, any sort of a attention. And that's just not good. And I say that because I've been that person before as a top producer. I coach top producers. When they come to me, they're all addicted to what's right in front of them, instead of getting up above the business and seeing at the core and foundational piece of a good business is the consistent act of prospecting. In fact, we talk about the creation of prospects over time, 52-week mentality. We do things intentionally. Whatever the campaign is, it has to be thought about and run intentionally in a 52-week mentality. Even if you don't work a whole month of the year, 6 weeks of the year, 8 weeks, you still have to have a 52-week mentality to create and guard your prospects. And that leads us to tonight, right? Once you go through all that prospecting, you are going to turn people into clients. So we have back-to-back weeks here. We will really talk about the word caring and protecting. And it's really, if I could explain it to you simply, there is a whole marketing stage that helps you understand new business development, not the least of which is week 3, when we talk about the development of unique selling proposition packages, aka marketing packages that are really informational and empowering. We start way back there by giving away that information so that by the time you bring somebody from a lead to a prospect, they understand what's unique about you. Then you keep doubling down on that type of information until they become a client. But then you care for them by executing the plan that you promised them. There's never a big departure. We don't say one thing to a lead, a different thing to a prospect, and then behave completely differently with a seller. In a systematic approach, you're making a promise and giving that away for free before they even hire you. Now, as they lean in as a prospect, you educate them deeper so that they can validate they can trust you, and then they trust you and become a client. And a lot of people, once they get a client, especially a seller, they list and they kind of get scared and disappear because they didn't start with a plan that they can now simply execute and say, see, I told you what you're going to get from me. Here I am executing it. So that leads us to tonight's call on caring for those sellers. Now, some of you might be early in this business and you say, well, I don't have any sellers of my own. That's fine. When you're teaching You're trying to create a vision for the whole business, right? If this were a business school for real estate, I would tell you that this was real estate 101 class, meaning the basics. And I would be teaching you how the answer to the question Michael Gerber poses in his book, how does the business really work? And these 12 steps are a really, really solid wireframe as to how the business can work and should work for a profitable real estate agent. Okay, that's the context. So we are up above the whole entirety of the business. Yes, there are little tactical pieces in here that you'll hyper focus on, but stay up with me. See the whole 12 sections of the course and understand it's the wireframe to run a left to right assembly line that is creating what? A happy past client, which is basically where we end the course in a couple of weeks, right? We're trying to create a happy past client who's likely to repeat and refer, which accelerates the whole business. But we have to think of it holistically and correctly so the pieces are cohesive. They're attached together so that when we arrive at that moment, we have birthed the happy past client, right? So let's talk about how to do that tonight in week 9 here. Let me just get this tab going. And again, it's very much a lecture for the first part of the call here, and I will go through this. But of course, at the end of it, you can ask me any questions that you want, and we can go from there. If you're a little bit shy, feel free to type them in. If you're watching on YouTube, you can put them there. If you're watching inside here in the Zoom, you can put them right in here. That's where I'll go first, okay? So let's do this, and let's start the slideshow. Okay, so caring for your sellers. Developing an answer to how are you caring for your sellers is essential, as is every section of this course. And so we're going to get through this to understand how to get and keep and sell more listings. Get, keep, and sell more listings. It's not as easy as it sounds, right? So this is what I was saying before. How do you introduce yourself professionally to sellers? So remember, we have to go back in what I call the conversion module to a seller lead, okay? Now, we've talked about leads hiding in plain sight for sellers. We've talked about expireds, probates where somebody's died and the administrator of the estate, their contact information is available. For sale by owners, I don't love them, so they're not on my list, but they're absolutely available to people that would want them. And those are the main core types of sellers that are hiding in plain sight. So there are a lot of different types of sellers in those contexts that you can introduce yourself to. But for all of them, generically, the best beginning to a relationship is to give away your best what to do information for free. Now, I know you won't be able to see me too well because I'm probably in a small window and the slideshow's in a big one, but we have in week 3 discussed the development, and I'll show it at the end of the call. We have discussed the development of what we really consider to be core and fundamental, which is an information product which serves as the beginning of this unique selling proposition way of doing business that differentiates you from the competition. So it starts all the way back in a very core and fundamental beginning of this course, right? So we're going to give away that best what to do information for free, right? And again, I'll show it to you, but just a quick summary for those of you that have seen it before. Some of you haven't. There is a 7-step plan that are really the 7 immutable steps somebody has to go through to sell their house, no matter whether it's Canada, Mexico, West Coast, East Coast, wherever. You have to go through these steps. So it's a generalized evergreen process that somebody has to go through. And then on top of that, to make it contextually more making sense for them, we give them evidence of what's sold around them straight from MLS, just like realtors, pictures, details, maps, and their answer to the question, but how's the market right now? A 1-page statistical answer to the question. So suddenly, we've given away a what to do step by step with information that begins to give them direction on what it all means to them. Okay. So that's what's happening. So what are the benefits to the seller when you do that? Well, when you give away your best information for free, you empower the seller and open up a competitionless lane for yourself. What does that mean? Well, if I truly, now remember, we got to go back to the conversation about avatar or ideal. That happens earlier in the course, right? So the avatar or ideal seller prospect, as we bring them from lead to prospect, is we have asked them, why do you want to sell the property? And they have a real answer to it. That's a real reason. Then we help them clarify their current motivation by asking on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated do they feel in that moment to do it? And if it's not a 9 to 10, then we have to continue to prospect them and keep them. We just talked about it last week, 2 weeks ago, right? We have to nurture them through that prospecting by continuously updating the information we started by giving them. Now, all of that educates them. And the good news is it's not complicated. So we're not trying to lop onto their backs all this complicated information to confuse them. We're actually trying to make it easy because in their busy lives, they don't want to figure out our business. That's our job. And if you want to end up in a competitionless lane, you want to take credit for being the singular differentiated person that thought well enough to educate that person so they feel empowered to start going through this process with or without you. Very important to understand that authentically, the law of reciprocity, which we talked about in the scripting and in Robert Cialdini's book, Influence, we very, 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 very much want to give this information away for free and not pestering them and not having that, okay, I know those law of reciprocity is probably behind this, but not saying, listen, if I give you this, you're going to give, no, you can't even think like that in your head. You have to be willing to give this away so that when it arrives in their world, it empowers them without attachment. Because what you're hoping for is in that empowering moment, the really good avatar for you really stands themselves up and says, I want more from you. So if they feel empowered by you in such a different way, a differentiated way from the competition, what do you put yourself in? A competitionless lane. So we're still all running the race against the competition, but you're over here competing by yourself. Whereas everybody else is saying, my company, the number of agents, my resume, they're all saying the same thing. And you're not even saying anything about you. You're giving information. So you're not even competing the same way. That's why we call it a competitionless lane. And for the right avatar, boy, will they feel empowered by you and want more from you, right? They'll be magnetically, Dan Kennedy talks about this and all sorts of marketing, materials that he has written and talks about. That's called magnetic marketing. If I give you something that really is informational and empowering and it relates to your situation, it's likely that you will be magnetized back to me. I will not have to go and grab you by the throat and try to drag you in because, as he says, those prospects pursued run away. But if I give you that information and you feel empowered by it, it's likely that you'll be magnetically attracted back to me where I can further offer you my insight. So we start with that information, and then what happens is we're magnetically attracting them to us, so they want to hear from us, which is more about our insight. What's your opinion about this stuff as it relates to me? Because a lot of people you give information to, they can't necessarily interpret it because they don't have that professional insight that we have. And I know some of you are saying, but I'm new to the business, I don't really know. Yes, you do. Because if each month you sit with your team and you go over the one-page statistical market update, and you understand what that means, and you stop saying things like, it's a buyer's market, it's a seller's market. Don't even say that. Just say, here's what's happening in the market. Why do you want to sell? Why do you want to buy? Because who cares what kind of a market it is if those people have a big enough reason to sell and / buy. So you just want to empower them with current information so that if their why is big enough, who cares what's happening? They're going to do it and they're going to seek insight from you, right? So now, as we start to have them feel empowered and they like us, how do we set ourselves up for a clear listing to actually get it, turn them into a client, and then selling it process, right? How do we do that? Well, it's best to chunk up your steps and educate the seller that you'll be following that exact process and reviewing with them along the way. That's why when I stop the lecture portion of it, I will open up the 7-step plan. This is exactly why we do it this way, because what you're doing, even though it's a hard concept for me to sell into your brain in the beginning, that you're going to give away this step-by-step process, you have to understand that nobody else is doing that, right? They aren't. So if you can chunk up what is a complicated process and a harrowing process, I mean harrowing. People get really like worked up over selling a property. It's a lot of anxiety causing. It's the single largest financial and emotional transaction most people will make in a lifetime. So if we chunk up those 7 steps and we make it 7th grade level easy to understand, we educate them. But the segue is when a lot of people say, well, what about your listing presentation? Well, duh. There it is, right? My listing presentation is not going to be a departure from that chunked up 7-step giveaway product. It's going to be me talking about those 7 steps that I say, listen, here are the 7 steps that I need to consider to sell your house. And so does everybody. So if you really want to be the dominant player in this listing presentation process, be the only one that brings in the 7 steps. And then you can challenge your competition to say, I don't know what they brought in, but these are the 7 steps we all have to go through. So let me and you talk about this in the right order. So we're going to have to talk about pricing first. And there's a qualitative side to pricing it right and a quantitative, And that's a skill set on the how-to we teach all of you Griffin and TRC agents. We teach you the ratio analysis piece of it because that's quantitative and that leads to the nice net sheet. Qualitatively, we can look at, this guy had, beautiful furniture. It was staged. His conditioning was better. Those are qualitative things we can talk about with the math. That's a 1-2 punch. Well, that's all baked into the 7 steps. Pricing leads to a condition conversation, leads to staging. Those 3 things alone are a very, very heavy piece of a listing presentation, but it's already in there. And then and only then once those things are considered, then you can tell them how marketing a listing actually works. Because see, when you don't have a 7-step plan that you're telling them this is the way it works and this is the way I do it, they run away with their own interpretation of how our business works. And that's disastrous. They get you in this sort of proverbial FBI interrogation style room. And, well, how are you going to market my property? They say, whoa, wait a minute. We can't even talk about marketing until we do a quantitative and qualitative analysis. Let's start with pricing it right. Then we can talk about qualitatively how you can improve the condition or not and the staging. Then we can get to marketing. And by the way, marketing your listing is pretty straightforward and it happens in 3 beats. 1, 2, 3, right? So we gain control over an exact process that not only are we telling them how it works without us, we're telling them exactly how it works with us. Because that's when you can get into, okay, well, when it comes to marketing, I have a professional photographer comes over, takes this. I have a professional writer. So now you're getting into how you're doing these things. But again, you've already led the witness to frame the conversation. You've framed the conversation, right? You're the one that's framed it. So you're framing this conversation around 7 steps so that when they go to hire you, this is the exact process you will follow and you will review with them along the way. Because what people are going to do is, well, we haven't had any this or no. See, my clients are telling me, hey, listen, should we talk about price again? My clients are telling me that 2.395 this morning, right? Hey, listen, sounds a little quiet out there. Should we talk about pricing again? Because he's framed in. He knows how this process is working and he sees us executing the marketing, which push marketing is number 1 with us. Nobody open houses product more than we do because that's the fastest path to getting real buyers to come or not come. And if they don't come, we get a pricing issue. So it's this just wonderful place to be in this safe environment of discussing how you will do it. Now, sometimes people will scoff at it or they won't listen to it or they won't believe it. They're just opinionated. That's not your avatar. If they're not going to listen to you talk about this process or it's lost on them, sometimes from an educational standpoint, they're not there. They're so emotionally unsound, they can't hear anything and they're not listening. That's not an avatar for me, right? In the same breath, if they're smart and they're arrogant, it's not an avatar for me. I can remember going to this lady's house and she was both emotional with the loss of somebody, but, we could tell it was kind of a stretch, she really wasn't listening to us. And I could see she had all the fancy brands on the table. And when I started to get into the math and she wasn't really listening, right? I'm like, okay, you're not going to listen, but this thing's going to sell exactly where I'm telling you. And it did. So sometimes you can have this and you can show them exactly, and it doesn't land. It doesn't mean this is wrong. It means they're just not a good fit. They have to be teachable and coachable through the process, right? So how detailed and organized is your onboarding process? So now we start to get to them where they're like, okay, I'll do it, right? Well, establishing a transparent, checklisted process for onboarding a listing and including the seller is critical because people will support what they help create, right? So I know that English is butchered there. So the idea is as they're going through this process with you and you're onboarding them, they're actually being told, hey, listen, now here's where the writer comes in. Now here's where this, we want you to read this. What do you think of this? Are there any details missing? So we, in a client care management standpoint, from a client care management standpoint, and Laura has been with me for a very long time, 19 years, but has been my client care manager at least 15 of those, right? So she's very much in charge of saying, I'm going to do all these things. You're going to review this. Then we're going to do these open house things. You're going to okay it. So there's a lot of that transparency as to now what is happening. We tell them all along the way because you're dramatically demonstrating incredible value all the way from lead through prospect. And now they've said yes. It's the most critical standpoint to keep them involved, right? Keep them involved and show them how much you're doing and make sure they're involved and they understand everything. Because the worst thing that can happen is you get to them to this onboarding process and it's not transparent and they don't know what's going on and they don't have a heads up. You made all these promises and there's sort of this gap, no good, right? And then how do you define that caring for the seller once that process is set up? Well, it's crucial to maintain your authority over the process and not to be afraid to tell the seller what must happen to get the property sold, especially when it comes to lowering the price. But let's go back to the 7 steps and let's go back to the concept of talking to my client that I was talking to at this 2.35, right? So I'm talking to him and I'm saying, listen, my feedback from the open houses is telling. We're walking into the room. Your 2 bedrooms are magnificent, but then you took the third one and you turned it into a gym. It's very cramped in there. And then we come into this very small living room. So we're going, it's sort of like we're sliding downhill. We need to bring in some staging. So we got a mover. We're going to move some stuff out of there. We're going to stage, that room more as a den. We'll pull the couch in. We'll put some chairs out. Now, all of a sudden we can stretch the living space backwards. And in a combination of that and the price, we should have a better way to go about this. But I'm not afraid to tell them to do those things now that we're there. I'm the authority. I have the plan. You hired me. This is what it is. Now, every 30 days, if we go that long with a listing, we're absolutely going to do a 30-day review. So we're going to take a look at all the action or lack thereof. You could get crickets in the first 2, 3. We wouldn't let somebody go 30 days with nothing happening. We would tell them, oh, it doesn't look right for this price, right? Something's really happened here. We missed it. We cheated outside the math like you wanted to, but we're dead in the water here. So we'll talk about that. But again, using Robert Cialdini's law of authority, this is the plan we introduced you to. You accepted it. Now we're going through it together. We can't blow it off. That's authority. Authority is not a negative thing. It's a professional thing in this case, right? And then as we go through the closing process, because that's still really, when they're starting to go through this, and again, we'll talk about closing, but as we start to get through this closing process, we're reminding ourselves, hey, we didn't abandon them throughout the client process. Now, in my case, we're going to pass it off to a closing coordinator a little bit too. We've got to make sure that there's another transparent checklisted process for closing a listing and including the seller in that process, because happy sellers are more likely to repeat and refer. Okay. We'll talk a little bit more about, let me see if we have a whole, yeah. So in week 11, we dive a little bit more into the details of closing, because that's almost a business in and of itself. After all this pursuit that can be a long time, you find somebody, you follow up with them. I mean, we have a client that just bought a $5 million purchase, selling a 3.95, has a 3.25 behind that. All, by the way, from an expired call once upon a time, protected the prospect over a year and a half, I think, because she had an oil spill from the neighbor underneath it. So we protected all of that. But now we're in this closing process for this $5 million property. And man, we are white on rice on that thing. Like we are all over it. I can see the going back and forth. Even the day of my daughter's wedding last Friday, when nothing was happening, I walked over to the property to meet with them and the HVAC guy. And they loved it. They were like, oh my God, thank you so much for doing this, because they're stressed out, right? And so all of this, the way that we're dealing with them as the closing process begins, is the way they're going to birth into being a past client, right? And they're going to end up closing, a good 8-9 million with us in that, and there'll be another 3 behind that. Well, that's a big deal, right? Because that person who's likely to refer at that kind of level is a piece of gold inside the business. But again, we'll dig into that a little bit more in week 11. Okay. All right. So voila. Remember, start the listing process by educating your seller rather than trying to take the listing. Okay. You're educating them from the very start. That goes all the way back to week 3, where we are talking about this, right? We're talking about getting this information in somebody's hands. Really, really critical. Okay, enough of that. Let's stop the sharing and let's get to the Zoom for some Q&A here. Have a small group here today because I know we were off last week. All right, gang, questions for me tonight about this subject, or, as you know, anything. Anything's free game. Looks like we have all ringers from the West Coast. How about that? If you want to make it easy on me tonight, I'll take it. If you don't, let's go. Hi. Yeah, I get you fine. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Are you talking about you're talking about the buyers? Okay, sellers. You didn't meet him at a house? Yep. Got it. Got it. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I don't use the booklet at all is the answer. I use No, 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 let me finish. I don't use the booklet at all as a presentation implement. I would have, let me just see if I have an intact one here so I can show it. Yes, 100%. So I would have on the left-hand side of the package would be the 7-point strategy infographic, but it would also have the 3-point marketing strategy, because a lot of people want to deep dive into the marketing. So the only drill down would be marketing, right? That's the only drill down. And then there's another one, Paul. If I really, really, really want to pull it out, I've got the Griffin Luxury Real Estate Marketing Plan that goes into a lot more of this very specific details of the 3 components of this. So because marketing becomes such a challenge sometimes to explain to somebody, I'll have it bullet pointed. I'll have it actually all 3 stages typed out too. So I can go 3 sections deep on that into the presentation. So infographic, like cardboard type of stuff, is way easier to deal with. But I will say, and having said that, you don't have to remember everything I said. You can read it all in here, right? So I said it's all fully articulated again in here. So, quote unquote, I took the notes for you already, right? So that's on the left-hand side, everything that I could use for presentation. On the right-hand side, the basics of the package is the answer to currently, even if we sent one, how's the market? And of course, the solds complete with the map and some pictures and details, right? So I get the story. I want the agent write up because they'll brag about the details in the pictures. And so those are the core pieces. Now, that would be the same thing that I would have sent to them. But what I'm walking in with is the analysis of the stuff that's sold. So the upsell, if they meet with me, is the analysis to include a net sheet to show what they could walk away with, right? So it's three pieces. I mean, again, three pieces. I'm taking the infographics and calling it one, right? I mean, it's all of the seller plan, it's all of the solds, it's the market update plus the analysis. Now, of course, if I've been to the house, the piece that it is not and cannot be physical is what to do and what not to do, right? I suppose we could in this group elevate that up to trying to get it to the point where we actually take notes with them. Say, listen, here's what to do, here's what not to do, staging, this thing, that thing, right? And here are some of the people. It might not be a bad idea to do that, but that's exactly what I would do. Cool. Yeah, you're welcome. All right. What else do we have? Any other questions tonight? Ty, Amy, Sham? Got a small group. Okay. Okay, buddy. Okay, Amy. Cool. Good. All right. Yeah, cool. Yeah, well, yeah, Ty, it gives you that vision for when you have that listing. It's just a continuation from everything else, right? It's like you're not learning something new. You're just going deeper and deeper and deeper, right? That's the key takeaway. Yep. Awesome. Good. Love it. Love it. Love it, brother. You're in here grinding all the time. I love it. I like the attitude. I like the attitude. I like it. So good. Okay. All right, guys. Well, listen, Seattle, have a good night. Appreciate you coming here. I was off last week because my daughter got married, so I know I lost a little momentum, but yeah, thank you. Yep, thank you. Thank you, but I appreciate y'all coming around here tonight, and, I love doing this course because, man, this is the stuff that I actually use to make my business work, and so I'm very certain about this stuff, right? This isn't stuff that I'm just pontificating. I think it's a theory. It's actually what we do, and it works really well. So try to copy me to the best you can once you get going. It's the easiest way for me to accelerate your success. But again, we all have our biases. We all believe, we only hear certain things in the beginning, or we cherry pick things because some things we're comfortable with, some things we're not. Just believe me when I tell you, a system is a system is a system. And the more specifically you can stick to it, the more you can get a predictable result, right? And that's what Paul's job is with me, to get you all a predictable result as quickly as possible. So try to learn it in detail. It's not complicated. It's all seventh grade level stuff, but try to learn it and stick to it, because then it's our problem, Paul and I, if it doesn't work, right? Because then we got to adjust it. But if you cherry pick it because you're biased about certain pieces of it, or you think you can cheat it, we have to just reel you back in, right? So, all right, gang. Listen, you all have a good night, and we'll see you next week in this thing. See you later. All right. You're welcome. Oh, yeah, Paul. Mhm. Yes, 100%. Yep, 100%. Love to do it. No better. That's perfect. The answer is yes, yes, and yes. Excellent. Yeah, always. Anytime we can pump somebody up before they go do something like that, there's no better way to take advantage of the coach. Yeah, man. Yep, bravo. Okay, kid. See you, buddy. Bye.